Hello, everybody. It's Rebecca Caro here, and I'm back with you this month, May 2018, with another Rowing Chat. Rowing Chat is the podcast I started a while ago for coaches, athletes, and coxswains who just want to ask more questions about some of the details about their rowing. I invite a load of different guests on, and this month we have as our guests Helen Tilghman and Kevin Goyena, who are both from the Seattle area of USA. Helen, introduce yourself to the group and tell us a little bit about your personal background in rowing.
All right. Hi, my name is Helen. I began rowing when I was 13 at a local club here in Seattle, where I am now a coach. I rowed through high school, rowed through university, and then began coaching full-time in the NCAA collegiate system, and am now the head coach for our high school girls team, as well as the director of rowing at the Mount Baker Boathouse in Seattle, which is where I met Kevin.
Which is a great segue. Kevin, please introduce yourself and tell us about how you got into the sport.
Hi, I'm Kevin. I'm 57 years old, and 3 years ago, my partner and I, Jason, we live near the Mount Baker Boathouse, and we kept seeing the boats on the water. We thought, let's go try that. So we did an intro to row day with Coach Tara, who you've had on the show before, and then jumped into 4 months of Learn to Row with her, and then transitioned into the master's program. So just under 3 years of rowing. In my regular daytime job, I'm been in the software industry for about 35 years.
So, Kevin, let me just kick off with you. An adult coming to a new sport is usually triggered by something possibly a little more than just the curiosity of seeing the boats. Tell us a bit more about the background.
I've always been competitive. I played tennis in high school. I then, in my later years, I had some daughters get into horse showing, and I actually got into horse showing, both showing, and then I became a United States Equestrian Federation registered judge for show jumping. So I competed in show jumping and hunter jumping. And so sports is something, I don't have a horse anymore, so sports is kind of a natural thing I like to do. And rowing with the lake right by our house, it was an obvious choice.
What's different about rowing, Kevin, compared with all the other sports you've referenced?
It's the team aspect for sure. In tennis, I played singles, a little bit of doubles, but mostly singles. Horse show, you're on a horse, you're all by yourself. It's you and the horse. I rarely get in a single unless I go to a camp where I am focusing on that. So it's about getting in that boat and gelling with 3 other or 7 other people. So that's the big shift, and it's just been a gas.
So I'm obviously totally biased, so I'm looking for confirmation bias here. Why does the sport of rowing crew not pitch itself well to people when it has this incredible, you called the word community? What is it that we're failing to tell the rest of the world about?
You know, I think some people might come into it thinking, oh, it's all about competition. Others may look at it and think of this elegant sport. I think the key is just getting people to come try it. And that's why the intro to row days and the learn to row days are so important. If you can get a person in a boat, tell a good story, have really supportive people there on that first time they're even being introduced to the sport, I think that is the good hook. But they got to get in a boat. They've just got to give it a try.
Well, we haven't solved this problem, but I'm still working on it, because I obviously, once you've tried it, you understand a little bit. And Helen, did you row continuously right up to the point where you switched over to becoming a coach?
I did. I rowed nonstop from age 13 to age 22, really, and then switched directly into full-time coaching. So it's been nonstop rowing 24/7 for now over half my life.
That's very, very impressive. So tell me a little bit about the time when you were figuring out for yourself that you wanted to transition from obviously one side of the bullhorn to the other. What were the skills that you thought you needed, and how did you go get them?
Yeah, so when I was in high school, I was fortunate to have really interesting, really supportive coaches. And it got my mind thinking that that might be something that I want to spend some time doing. So when I was at university and I was rowing, I tried to take full advantage of paying attention to what my coaches were doing. And I had this odd idea that I was going to coach part-time and through university get a job that would pay the bills. And about halfway through my second year of university, realized I have these coaches that coach full-time. It's their only job. I think maybe that could be an option. So a lot of it was being intentional about how I paid attention while I was still an athlete and trying to pick up on what was it that my coaches were looking for. I think the biggest thing that I learned from them was the ability to see the larger picture and create a plan for that and be able to work through the minutia of daily details in pursuit of that larger picture plan. Something I'm still working on very much, but was the biggest takeaway for me. And after that, it was one, my body was not going to let me row very much longer. And I had started coaching in my vacations during college, so I had some experience. And then it was just getting myself in a launch and spending as many hours as possible coaching early on to get over those initial hurdles and start to feel like I actually had some semblance of an idea of what I was doing. And then eventually talk someone into letting me be in charge of seeing how far I could take my ideas.
It is wonderful, isn't it? The first time you go to coach, you have your megaphone and you kind of pick it up and then you put it down again. You think, what am I going to say?
Indeed.
So did you, Helen, take a formal training course to become a coach, or are you, like myself, self-taught essentially?
I am a little bit of both. I've never taken a formal coaching course. I went to conferences. I was an intern coach at Craftsbury Sculling Center, just here in Vermont. That's probably been my absolute best professional development and learning opportunity. My master's degree is in education and a program specifically called Intercollegiate Athletic Leadership. So it is not rowing specific, but it is specifically for those that would like to work in a collegiate athletic environment. So there's, again, not sports-specific skills, but professional skills that were very intentionally taught for that career.
Fantastic. Now you work obviously with what I call junior athletes, so under 18s who are learning to row, and you're a head coach of quite a large team. Can you just explain the structure and setup that you have at the Mount Baker Rowing Club?
Yeah, so Mount Baker is comprised of our master's rowing program, a juniors or ages 13 to 18 rowing program. And across our rowing membership, we are upwards of 250 members rowing at a variety of times throughout the day, across the week. The squads that I'm specifically responsible for include the high school girls, and we have 50 to 60 participants in that every season. And then I am right now the interim master's lead coach, and we have probably over 100 registered, but a regular showing of 60 to 70 in the mornings. And we run our practices as one large team, which, as we get into the details of Kevin's programming later, you'll see why it was so necessary having 65 people at the boathouse at 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah. And presumably you have help on your team. It's not just you.
No, thank goodness. No, that would be a disaster. I work with staff of about 15 other coaches broken up between various squads. With the high schools kids, I've got 2 assistant coaches. And with the masters, we have 3 other coaches.
So when you were first getting going and you weren't the head coach, can you tell us about the organizational structure of how things were managed and run at that time?
So the long-standing traditional logistics of a daily practice had been, we had a giant magnetic whiteboard, and people would put their magnet from the bottom to the top to indicate that they were present. And then coaches would organize the magnets into lineups. And for a long time, the team was of a size where that was manageable. It certainly wasn't necessarily limiting the team's ability to get on the water and take advantage of the time that we had. However, within the last 5 to 8 years, the growth of the master's program in particular had been so rapid that it quickly outgrew that process. I was actually not at the boathouse at the time that Kevin began, but I think when Kevin came on the Masters team, I mean, we were bursting at the seams, and there is no magnet board large enough to maintain that many magnets without 3 coaches having to stretch in 5 different directions. Yeah, it was really, we liked our magnet boards. I still like my magnet board. I got to be honest. I still use it with the juniors, but it's a little bit different organization there.
So you literally had a little thing that said Rebecca on it, and Rebecca rows port and she can scull, and you literally would move it to the top and then try and figure out boats.
That is correct, which means anytime you had someone new come, you had to physically make them a magnet and try and remember who they were. And if you had someone lose their magnet, they basically were lost forever. You're never going to know if they're there or not.
The potential for mischief is enormous. It's not just misspelling someone's name. So you've identified, obviously, your success led to, I think you called it, straining at the seams. And you also presumably have to keep in your head what boats you have available, what weight of athlete the boats are, suited for, and so on. So talk me through how you got to the crisis point, and what was it that pushed you over the edge and away from the beloved magnet board?
Well, I think really it was, well, we always get feedback from athletes saying we'd like more time on the water. The beginning of practice takes too long. And I think it really took Kevin with a new set of eyes and a background to think of things differently than those of us that had been kind of stuck in our ways. I'll admit it. To come in and say, we could do this differently. This could work better. There are other options. And I think as anyone who has been in the rowing world for a while, and certainly anyone who has coached, they know that it's very easy to get stuck in your ways and want to stay with the same logistical structures because it's predictable and it's comfortable and you figured it out. And when it takes over 35 minutes to get your team on the water, you got to say, this is not going to work in a 2-hour practice, because then it impedes your ability to coach. And as much as we all know as coaches, we need to be in charge of those logistics. We're there to coach. We're not there to organize. So I think it really was of necessity. We wanted to coach. Let's figure out a way to get out on the water so we can do that.
Which cues you, Kevin. So you're the man with the new eyes who's come from other sports. When you first transitioned into the Masters program from the Learn to Row program, what did you see? Can you remember what it felt like?
I remember very clearly. So I was in the Learn to Row with Coach Tara Morgan. She had about 20 of us, and the magnet board all worked fine. We'd come in and move our magnet to show we were there, and we'd go get on an erg, and she'd do lineups for about 20 people. After 4 months of Learn to Row, I go to the Masters program, and now I'm amongst, 50 to 60 other people. And so there's this board, and we got our own magnet, and we did all that. The thing that maybe pushed me to really look at something is not only did we have to do our magnets, that wasn't that big a deal. But in our boathouse, we don't have a lot of regular coxswains. We rotate through the coxswain seat. That means keeping track of when you last coxed a boat, because if it's been 2 months, you ought to be up next, right? Versus the person that coxed last week. So the part that just drove me nuts was I had to get in line in a queue of adult people walking up to a sheet of paper where they had to find their name along the left and today's date along the top and put in the number of sessions since they last coxed, which is always one greater than the last time. But that line of just standing there, I'm thinking, oh my God. So that little bit really pushed me to go start thinking about a system that just will help us know who's going to be there, lineups, are they a port starboard preference, that kind of thing. And I thought software can help here.
Brilliant. And thank goodness you're the man who can see the world through the lens of software. So you started trying to solve this simple problem of the people, the availability of coxswains, bow side, stroke side, and boats. what was the first iteration of iCrew that you produced, or was it just a spreadsheet?
No, it was full online web-based system. I today do have an app you can install on your iPhone or an Android device, but back then it was just any web browser. You bring up the system, log in, and yeah, it was a full-blown user interface on the web, and it focused mostly on getting practice lineups done. Okay. So knowing who is coming that day, allowing the coaches to potentially do lineups the night before, which is really ideal. And some of our coaches have moved to that because they've trained us well to be very clear. The rowers know to be in iCrew, and if they're going to be there the next day or not, they need to make sure that's clear in iCrew. And it does let the coach do a lineup the night before. So that was the first focus, is who do we think is going to be there? Let's get a lineup page done so we can actually show the lineups either on somebody's smartphone. About the time I was building iCrew, all of a sudden our team at Baker put in 2 large monitors in the room we erg on. And they were bringing the monitors in to do things like video display and video training, but it tied in perfectly with my development of iCrew because I developed a page where you just, when the lineups are done, you put the page up on these big screens. Everybody walks up, finds their location in the boat, and they go get in the boat. So that was the primary kind of version 1, was attendance tracking and lineups.
And did you solve the coxswain problem?
Yes, that was one of the features built right in. I know if you were sitting in the coxswain seat, I can keep track now of when you last coxed.
Fantastic. So flicking back to you, Helen, for the implementation of this, software is all well and good, but we all know that we human beings are the ones that can mess things up. How did you go about training, firstly, your coaches, and then secondly, the athletes?
Well, the easiest way I've learned to train a rower is you either let them on the water or you don't. And if they didn't check in, if they didn't make their attendance plans clear, then they didn't get a seat unless we really needed to fill one. And yeah, no one wants to pay money and wake up early to sit on land when they don't have to. So that one was actually pretty easy. I think we're about 99% of the way to having the team trained. The smartphone edition certainly helps with that. So yeah, it's really easy. It's you check in or you don't, and then that determines whether or not you go on the water.
And do you see, as an athlete, can you see on your iPhone or Android device, can you see the lineup that you're in?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll answer that. So you'll see when we demo later, that's the first thing I'll show is, as an athlete, when you sign on, if the boating has already happened, you'll see the boat you're in and the seat you're in. And iCrew lets the coaches keep lineups private. So if they don't want to share the lineups the night before, even though they've done them, which is usually a good thing. Like, you can imagine somebody sees they're coxing the next morning and maybe they have a cough when they wake up because they don't want to. A lot of people just don't like coxing. But so you can keep them private. And what the typical flow these days is, people indicate they're going to be there, but we also track that you are physically present. So the old magnets being moved from the bottom to the top, we now replicate that with a touchscreen computer set up in the boathouse. So when people physically arrive, they can either on their phone, using GPS coordinates, we know they're at the boathouse and they can check in now from their phone. If they left their phone in the car, they walk up to a touchpad. We use a Surface tablet, and they tap their tile, and that tapping the tile indicates they're physically present. Meanwhile, the coaches are in another room, and they're watching tiles basically change from, I'll just say, from gray to blue, from we think they're going to be here to they're actually here. So they know as people are arriving, and they can finalize the lineups, get us on the water.
And how long has that 35-minute wait cut to now?
Well, let's see. On a good day, 15.
Yeah, I was going to say 15.
Yeah.
That's a, 100% improvement, guys.
With 60 to 75 people and only 2 docks, at this point, the largest hangup is physical capacity, not organizational limitations.
Yeah, I get it. That's Great. So how long did it take from the, the germ of the idea in young Kevin's brain to actually having this rolled out and working?
I believe I started development in February of 2016, January, February. And within about 4 months, I had it ready to show the coaches and to kind of give it a trial run.
And then, Helen, when you did the full rollout, was it like just 1 week you flipped from magnet board to software?
So by the time I was back at Mount Baker, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, they were already rolling with iCrew consistently. I think I got there probably 6 weeks into it being fully implemented for the masters. The rollout for the other programming is still in process. And that's one of the places where we're figuring out exactly what functionality is ideal for each group.
Yeah, so let's now talk about high schoolers, because not all of them have the ability to carry a GPS device. How do you plan on running this? Because do they make their own way to the boathouse, or do they come in a school bus?
They make their own way. At this point, we are not yet using iCrew for daily lineups with the juniors, but we do use it to track their attendance. Because we have fairly set lineups with that group, the bigger thing for us is knowing who's actually going to be, who's going to be absent. The assumption is, unlike the master's team, the assumption with the juniors is they're going to be there every day. So we've used it most as a way to know when people are going to be absent. The secondary use for us is when we are planning for regatta attendance, knowing exactly who is going to be able to be there in race. And that's where we do absolutely use it for lineups. We have 4 junior squads. We have to organize equipment use, et cetera, between all of them. So we need to know who's actually going to be there and what lineup they're in.
Brilliant. So day-to-day training, tick. Got that, the check in the box, as you say. We were joking before we went live about English and American being 2 countries divided by a common language. Checks and ticks. Now, that's the needs of the coach and the day-to-day, what I call training, what you call practice. You've mentioned regattas. Now, regattas are a level of complexity all on their own, because not only do you have to enter crews, you still have to know if people are available, and then you have to decide which events they're going to do. So, Helen, tell me, what was the challenge that you faced, and how did you brief Kevin on what you thought you wanted when he was writing the software?
So this was a recent addition. Kevin and I had talked about this, I think, back in January. Sort of looking ahead to our racing season and what is it that we really would like to be able to do better. And the biggest part was organizing equipment use for complex regattas, as well as making information available to athletes about where they need to be to load the trailer, where they need to be at the venue, where is the venue, things that coaches tend to get just asked and asked and asked the same questions by 50 different people. And I really wanted to get to a system where no single individual was the one that everyone had to find, that there was a centralized place for people to receive that information. So the idea of, yeah, when to arrive, what event you're in, what boat you're rowing, for coaches to go in and say, okay, I know that my crew needs to hot seat from another squad, etc. Particularly for the juniors regattas that we have here, and we only have so many spots in the trailer, but we have 150 high school athletes that we have to get races for. So that level of coordination requires a lot of clear communication and strategizing.
Wow. Kevin, how did you solve this?
That was yeah, Kevin, you were the one that actually did the work. I just whined about the problem to you.
Yeah. So before Helen came on, I did have support for doing lineups for regattas, but what was missing was that kind of central information spot, because she needed a page where people could go to know who's loading the trailer. Sometimes juniors load the trailer and masters unload it. So that page is out there. And then simple things like, is there food at the venue? Links to RegattaCentral, which is our main regatta management system. It's really just a central place where all that's collected. The other thing iCrew can do is there's multiple junior squads and master squads. Each coach can go do their own lineups in their own session in iCrew, But iCrew's smart enough to tell them when there's got a boat collision, like, hey, Helen's trying to use the Audacia and now the novice girls are trying to grab that same boat. You know, we can tell them there's conflicts there, either between masters and juniors or multiple junior squads, because it's all data driven. So it's the information is there.
So Helen was telling us about last weekend. You had 2 separate regatta venues, so 2 separate events on the same day. Now that you obviously have iCrew rolled out, what actually happened and how did you manage all your different people and places and boats? Yes,
so we had 150 juniors competing at one location, and we had 60 masters competing in another. And this was all within the same weekend, and boats needed to be transferred from one trailer to another trailer so they could be rowed by a whole bunch of different people. And it was very much a divide and conquer. So we had 2 masters coaches organizing the logistics for the masters lineups and boat use. And we had the juniors coaches obviously organizing their own logistics. And because everyone was putting that information into iCrew, those messages that Kevin mentioned, when there's a conflict or when you need to keep track of counts or whatnot, that's already provided to you instead of trying to sit down with millions of Excel spreadsheet lines saying, well, I have this one. Are you using that? Okay, we can't use that. What other boat do we have? So being able to all access the same information and work with the same information through the same site, but at any location that we wanted with as many coaches as we needed to have doing it was really clutch.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, I'd say proof in the pudding. You know, you have a complex situation and it worked. So hats off to the both of you. We're going to take a short break to hear from some of our supporters. Support for today's Rowing Chat show comes from Health IQ, a life insurance agency who has the good sense to realize that athletes are healthier than the average population. You don't have to explain why your body is a high quality, amazingly fit asset. These guys actually know that you are less likely. In fact, it's 56% less likely to have heart disease if you're physically active. And boy, do we know how active rowers are. Get special rates for life insurance and show your support for Rowing Chat by visiting www.healthiq.com/rowing and ask for a free quote. We know you all enjoy Rowing Chat, and so by following through with our sponsors, we can earn some money to support our costs. Please do it now. Open a browser so you don't forget to get a quote. healthiq.com/rowing. We launched a new book on Row Perfect this week. It's called The Definitive Guide to Rowing Seat Racing, and it is a collection of articles for coaches, for athletes, and for coxswains. We run through from a lot of different perspectives whether you should run seat racing, how to run seat racing, and do it accurately so that you get convincing results. From an athlete's point of view, we explain how it works and how you can participate in order to get the best possible outcomes for yourself and to avoid people feeling that they've been misrepresented. For coxswains, it's not immediately obvious that you should select coxswains using seat racing results. And there are very clear instructions about how coxswains can participate to help the coaches find the best lineups. Right now, I'm looking for people to review the book for me before we roll it out and push it to a wider audience. So if you have time between now and the 10th of May to read a 48-page book all about seat racing, if you're interested, I'd like to have representatives who are coaches, who are athletes, and who are coxswains to take a read and write a review for us. Please get in touch to me on the Row Perfect website. And if you'd like to buy a copy, it is already in our shop. If you go to rowperfect.co.uk/shop, it's in the segment called ebooks. And in fact, right now, it's also on the homepage on the hero image. Now, back to my guests, Helen Tilghman and Kevin Goyena. Kevin, I think it's time you need to show us, what does iCrew actually look like if I'm a coach and I'm going to be using it?
Okay. So actually, I'm going to start with the rower's perspective, if that's okay.
Go for it.
Okay. So are you able to see the screen right now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I've signed on into a fictitious organization in iCrew. It's just a place I'm able to test, but I've signed on as Ann Mason, and I've made the screen small so you can imagine this on her cell phone. And the first thing she sees when she signs on is today's lineup. So she sees that she's in the Ready All boat. It's an 8+ coxswain. The note from the coach is it looks like a mixed 8 going out. We have some specific oars, and then we see the lineup, and we see that she's in the 6th seat. And she knows she's actually already checked in here. The session goes from 9 to 11. And the coach has said, hey, today it's a technical practice on water with some pause drills. You can add some links and other stuff. The other thing athletes are able to do if they need to send a coach a note pertaining to this particular practice, you can see they can put in a note. Here, Ann's just saying, I'm running 10 minutes late. Coaches can also respond to those notes. iCrew also supports a full journal entry, so you can create your own journal in iCrew and track every practice, how you performed each day. Coaches can put journal entries in about you. You can share those journal entries with your coaches and your fellow rowers. So that's kind of the first glance you get. If there is a practice session, once you sign on, if lineups are done, you're going to see your lineups. The other key parts are, we talked about just knowing who's going to be at any given session. So this is the My Attendance Plans tab. And I can go view all the history of my attendance, even down to what seat I rode 6 months ago with which other people and which boat. But the key thing here is just indicating which sessions you're going to be at. So right now, this Ann is going to be at all the sessions except for the one on the 11th of May. So we call it toggling out. If she changes her mind and is able to attend that, she just toggles back in, and perhaps she's going to miss the Wednesday session on 5/16. That's all they have to do to indicate if they're going to be there or not. And even with the Masters, we do assume that you're going to be there. So really, if you're not going to be there, you just have to come and toggle out. And you can show even more sessions. We create months in advance. We have all the sessions defined. So yeah, it's just simple as toggling out. Now, even a kind of an added little benefit here is this my dates away. So you can imagine toggling in and out. You can certainly use that screen. And if you wake up sick one morning, or you're sick the night before, or something has come up, sure, toggling in and out's fine. But iCrew can also just support you entering days you know you're going to be away from the boathouse. Summer vacation, business trip. You can add a single date away, or even a date range. So if I'm going to be gone the 7th through the 11th, now the system knows all those dates are in the system, and that's it. You don't even have to worry about toggling in and out. You're not even going to be included in sessions those across those days. So that's kind of the key things for rowers. There's definitely more functionality, but let me just switch over to the coach's perspective. So here, this is the coach's view. They're typically going to be working on a PC or a larger Mac or something with a larger screen, because it just needs more real estate. I'm just going to pop over to the Today page. So this is a fictitious organization, ABR. If I pop over to Today at ABR, whoops, sorry, I got to log back in. So back to Today at ABR, I can see today we've got just the Masters AM workout. That's the Masters AM team in iCrew. And I can go to that check-in page I talked about. So as a coach, the first thing I'll do as I come to the boathouse is I will bring up this page and go set up our tablet over in the room that everybody arrives at and ergs. And what this screen is showing is there's a bunch of folks that aren't going to be here. They're all showing in lowercase red text. And then lots of blue check marks. These are people that have physically arrived and checked in. And then anybody you see without the check mark in gray, they are not yet checked in. So they have not arrived at the boathouse yet. And hopefully they're going to arrive, because meanwhile, the coach is over doing lineups. So I'll show you the lineups page. This is lineups for this specific practice session. At the top of the screen, you see your full inventory of boats and all your oars. And then you can think of this as a kind of a grid or a spreadsheet type layout, but you basically just bring down boats and oars into the grid and you load people into the boats. So to just make the changes, if I wanted to bring another 8 down into the lineups, I just tap that tile, tap it here, select some oars, and then I can start moving rowers into this lineup. You can see they're labeled coxswain, seat 8 through 1. So if I'm the coach and it's the morning of the session, I'm staring at this going, where's Roman, where's Carl, where's Janelle? Now, they may show up and these tiles will just pop blue right in front of my eyes. But to finalize lineup, it may be we're 10 minutes in and we're just going to assume these folks aren't going to be here. So you can move them out of lineups and perhaps just start moving people into those slots. So it's just tapping tiles, getting some lineups finalized. Maybe I have to move them up from these other boats. So I've got a lot of boats already set up here, some 4s and 8s. But I just start moving tiles around until I can get the boats all filled. And then we make them public and the crews can see the lineups from their phone, or we go share this screen on the big screen, the big physical screen in the boathouse. So if I go back here and say all of today's lineups, this is the page we can share on a large monitor and everybody can find themselves in their boat. A lot of folks do actually pull up their phone, and especially coxswains or dedicated coxswain in our master's group. He typically has his lineup on the phone and he's heading to the boat and he starts finding his 8 or 4 people and to get in the boat and head out. So that's kind of the main functionality. The lineups piece that you saw, it's very similar for regattas. You can do all the lineups for regattas. The one key difference is when you define a regatta session in iCrew, it knows that you're going to use boats multiple times and oars multiple times and rowers in multiple events. So you're able to put Anne in multiple boats in the lineups because we know it's a regatta and we know she's capable of rowing more than one event in a day. Another key thing that is kind of important in our organization, we do a lot of erg tests, and we just did an erg test yesterday for the masters. It was a 1K test. So you can create tests for either a distance or length of time. So for the masters team, I'm going to create a 1K test. Let's just call it the May 1K. And let's say it's going to be Tuesday morning. And it's going to be 1,000 meters in length.
I think I hate you already.
And the splits are going to be at 250 meters. We're going to click Save and Continue. And this is the page where I can enter all the results for that test. Now, just recently rolled out a change here, and they used it yesterday very successfully with the masters. And that is rowers now from their smartphone, we allow them to enter their own test results. So in the past, it took a while for our coaches to collect the data and get it all plugged in. And, after a test, people are very curious, like, how did I do against other folks? And it was taking too long. And we decided we should let rowers put in their own test results. So now the rowers put in all their test results for yesterday. And I can show you really quickly. If I pop back over to our actual Mount Baker crew, our master's test results are right here.
I haven't even seen these yet.
So quite a few PRs yesterday, actually. I was looking at the data.
There's another word. We call them PBs, personal best, not personal
personal records. Yeah, I've heard PB also. So here's all the data that got entered. The athlete only has to enter the total time, because iCrew is smart enough to calculate the 500-meter split for you, and they can all put a note in too. So somewhere down here, probably somebody put a note that they did a PR here. Andrew said kept a more steady pace than last time. So that's kind of cool. And then his previous 1K results are all listed here. Now, I know Helen likes this part, is that if she wants to take all of this to Excel, she can do that from iCrew. So you can just pop out a file and take it to Excel. And, you know, what people do with data, it's up to them. But iCrew at least get it over to Excel, where you can manipulate and sort and do whatever you want with it.
I saw you had a weight adjusted field in there. How's that calculated?
Yeah, I use the
weights.
I use the calculation that is documented on the Concept 2 site.
Where does the athlete input their weight?
On their profile.
Oh.
So yeah, I can show you the profile. Every athlete has a profile. So here's Anne's profile. And if you go down here to all the rower information, we know her year of birth, which is really important for masters, gender, height, and weight.
And you're obviously going to do a kilograms equivalent for us international people who don't understand pounds.
We do, because there's a crew using iCrew in New South Wales, Australia, and we use kilograms for that field.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So flick back to this complexity of regattas. I'm intrigued at how you enable Anne to race several times in a day. Do you have a sample laid out there, Kevin?
Yeah, I think I do. Let me take a look here. Here's a Lake Stevens regatta. So this was the regatta the Masters went to a couple weeks ago that Helen was talking about. This was the one where the Masters were here on Sunday and the juniors were at another location the day before. So this is the Mount Baker lineups that went to that regatta. And you can see, let's see if I tap on Jeremy. So I tap Jeremy here. He was in a Masters 4+, and also it highlighted that he's over here in the men's 8 too. So we know what event he was in, and had RegattaCentral been updated, we would have actually had the start time for those events. So we know if he might have been in trouble trying to hot seat between the two. But you can see versus a regular practice, iCrew won't let you put Jeremy in 2 boats. That's not going to work. We send out 1 set of boats, but you can see if I tapped Sam, he's also in that 4 with Jeremy, and Carson's probably in a couple other boats. So yep, there he is down here. And at the bottom of the page, we're keeping track of race counts. So, you know, the coaches like to let folks row in a similar number of events as their other rowers. So iCrew can let folks know how many events you've got people in. Maybe you find an imbalance, somebody's in 4 events and another person's in 1. And then
9. If you row with my friend Chris ends up in 7 or 9 for some reason. Everybody loves Chris.
Yep. We had that at Masters last year. We had one guy that did, I think he was in 9 events, because he's just a great rower and everybody wanted him. And then this last coxswain information, this is where the coaches know which people to put in the cox seat, because they're going to be at the top of the list, those folks that it's been a while since they last coxed.
Fantastic. And iCrew, for the regatta setting, you obviously put in the race time when you're doing the lineups, and it then doesn't howl that you know the same person's in multiple times, as you explained.
Yeah, the way it actually works is this event, unfortunately, RegattaCentral wasn't up to date with all the times. So when you tap this tile and you put in an event number, iCrew goes and talks to RegattaCentral and brings back the event name and the time and date of the event. Here it's bringing back zeros. Like I said, it wasn't set up fully, but at a regular regatta, we know the times of all these events. And then iCrew can resort all your lineups by the start time of the event, and you can visually see where you might have some potential conflicts.
And if your event isn't run by RegattaCentral, as in other countries frequently don't use it,
yeah,
what do you manually input this?
You can manually input it in the, you can tap it into the note field. So you can see what we did because RegattaCentral wasn't up to date. We came in here and put in the specifics. We knew that this was running at 5:28 p.m. in lane 4. So
and
we
does
filled
it
in the note.
calculate the average age for you? Because long
Yes.
division's never been my strong point.
It absolutely does. So in this lineup, if I were to take Phil out and put Eric in, watch this over here. It changed to a 49. If I bring Eric over, well, it didn't change. Let's bring Joel. Now it's a 52 in the American, it's a D age category. So yeah, it does that all for you. Because on the profile, we know the rower's year of birth, so we know their age.
Fantastic. What else, Helen, do you find particularly useful as a coach when you're using this end of the system?
The regatta specific part for the juniors is actually most helpful. It's actually applicable to the masters as well. Part of my job on the administrative side is to track who has actually paid for regattas. And part of that means you need to know who's actually going to be racing at regattas. And when coaches are able to go into iCrew, which has all the regatta payment info, etc., and put in their lineups, then I know I can compare those lineups with our payment records. And just the back scenes, nuts and bolts of running an organization, that's really important when you've got 12 regattas in 10 weeks and you got 250 people. You really hope don't go on summer vacation before they pay up their regatta fees. I think that's one thing that most of our coaching staff doesn't have to deal with. That's purposely designed to sort of be kept in the office. But again, that ability to track participation, actual physical presence, and connect that to sort of the inner workings of the organization has been hugely important for us.
And time saving, I imagine.
Indeed.
So one thing that was important also for the juniors, this was just before Helen came back to our boathouse, but the rollout for the juniors, I needed to add document tracking to iCrew, which is something that the masters didn't. We had like a float test, that was about it, but the juniors have quite a few other documents. So that's a feature that I needed to develop before the juniors could get onboarded with it. So document tracking of parent permission forms, code of conduct agreements, that sort of thing is a feature they needed.
That's fantastic. And is it electronic document signing, or is it just a physical, someone's picked up the paper?
Well, another very recent enhancement, as in like 2 weeks ago, if you have a document such as a code of conduct form, which really just requires somebody to read and sign, iCrew will collect what I call an electronic signature, and that is popping up a box that says you've read the document and you agree, and you type in your name as it's displayed on the screen and you click sign. And I collect the who did that and the date and time they did it, and we consider that a signed document.
That's fantastic. And I'm guessing there are all sorts of enhancements in the pipeline. Can you talk about any of them, or is it super secret?
No, in fact, I can talk about one because it's very much something that's now I see that's needed across multiple boathouses. So I happened to be in San Diego this past weekend, and whenever I go to another city, I like to visit a boathouse and show them iCrew. So I was down and showed San Diego Rowing Club, a club that has been around since 1888. It was amazing seeing these pictures on their walls. I was going through all the stuff iCrew does already, but their key thing is down there, and I have it with a few other current users of iCrew, and that is the ability for independent rowers to come in and check out a boat, take it on the water, and bring it back, of course. So I'm going to be working with the president of San Diego Rowing Club to come up with that set of features in iCrew. So imagine you're approved to be an independent rower, meaning somebody at the club has said, yeah, this person is qualified to take a boat out. Well, they're going to be able to come into iCrew, see the boat inventory, and actually check out a boat and take it out with either a single or double or quads. So that feature, like a couple other clubs had mentioned it. San Diego Rowing Club kind of was the team that has convinced me that I need to go develop that.
Fantastic. So I will give you the other enhancement that we have at our club, which is we're organized somewhat differently because we mostly scull rather than, so we don't have the coxswain problem.
Yeah.
We log ourselves out onto the water and back into the boathouse, mainly for safety. You know, if I can't see you from the boathouse and I can see there's a boat missing, you know, did you die or are you just having a really nice time on the far side of the lake and I can't see you? Is that also incorporated?
So when I was talking to San Diego Rowing Club, they did, they showed me some paper logs they keep track of. And one of them was people basically logging not only that they took the boat out or wanted to reserve a boat, and now they're actually physically there and the time they went out on the water and came back in. So that's probably going to be a piece of it, of this enhancement. And I believe the club in New South Wales, North Shore Rowing Club, I believe I heard that from them also.
You know the name of my club?
No.
North Shore Rowing Club. We
really?
turn
up at regattas in Australia because I'm from New Zealand, and both clubs have navy blue shirts and the same name. They're great innovators, North Shore Rowing Club. I'll take all the credit. Kevin, it sounds like you've gotten yourself a job for life. I mean, I take it this is I think hobby is probably the wrong word. This is a passion project.
Yeah, it really is. I had mentioned earlier that I judge show jumping, and I did something similar in that over in show jumping, in that when I was training to be a judge, I went to smaller local shows where paper and pencil was fine to keep track of the judging. My first day learner judging with an actual official, it was down in Southern California at a very large horse show. And I sat in the booth with this mentor judge, and I watched 80 horses come into one class that he had to track. And I went to the hotel that night and started building software for show jumping. And it's funny because that software, while it's not taken off tremendously in the US, the folks in New South Wales love it.
I think a trip is coming up.
Oh, we've talked about that. But yeah, so to your point, this is, for me, I'm not really making much money on iCrew, but it isn't about that right now. It's more about, it's something that I love doing. I see it making a positive impact on crews. So, I mean, the more folks get on it, awesome, but that's not necessarily what's driving me to keep making it better.
I love the fact that both of you who come from the state of, we want to make the experience for the athletes and coaches better. And that's just a very powerful motivation, and so aligned with the basic passion of why do we like rowing. I think I take my hat off to both of you.
Thanks.
Now, before we wrap up, Helen, I'd love to know a little bit more about your work with your masters and the curriculum development that you mentioned that you're doing for coaches with youth rowing, because I personally have been to a few coaching events as a rowing coach and found that within a multi-sport coaching conference, there are very big differences between team sports and individual sports. And they were trying to teach us different things that we could be coaching. But we found that although rowing is technically a team sport, you're going a distance in a marked lane. So actually we were more similar with swimming and track and field than we were with hockey or netball or basketball. What are the sort of things that you are working on that can help coaches across all these different sports?
Yeah, so the research that I'm helping with at the University of Washington is looking at sort of what are the core practices that good coaches use on a regular basis to build relationships with their athletes that allow those athletes to experience the social and emotional growth that gives sport such a unique place for us, and also reach their peak athletic performance. And there are some very important underpinning principles to that can be shared across all sports, regardless of team or individual, age, level of competition. Just the idea of why it is we do sport. As much as winning is great, it's that idea of you can always be better. And the direction that we take with this research is saying there are very clear actions that you take to communicate your philosophies, your sport-specific knowledge, your own experience in order to help your athletes reach their own points of growth and performance expectations. And the biggest thing that we talk about is really how to communicate. I think we've all had the experience of a teacher or a coach who they know their stuff. Like they understand the X's and O's. They have a great technical or strategic understanding, but they can't share that understanding with someone else and get them to replicate it. I certainly struggled with that as a student with some of my instructors, and was always fortunate, I think, to have coaches that were quite good at it. And that's really been the crux of what I've taken away from this research, is the idea of what are the really simple, specific, actionable items that you can do. And as much as our research focuses on youth-based sport development, it's almost more applicable in my work with masters. I think anyone who's been in coaching knows that it's a very different dynamic, coaching masters versus coaching kids. And those skills, I think, are even more important.
Can you give us an actual example?
Yeah, so my favorite example is if you're giving feedback to an athlete. If Kevin's out sculling, I'm going to pick on your sculling for a second, Kevin. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, we got a lot to work on. Okay, but how am I going to communicate to Kevin what he should work on first in a way that he actually buys into wanting to work on it? And it doesn't just sound like, Kevin, you're really bad at sculling, which he's not. He's gotten a lot better. For example, ask a question. Instead of coming up and saying, you're doing X, Y, and Z wrong, you need to change it in A, B, and C ways, go up and say, Kevin, what do your catches feel like right now? And the athlete then, Kevin's got to think about, what am I feeling? Oh, wow, maybe I was feeling that my seat is sliding before there's any resistance out there. Hey, so is my blade not going in early enough? And all of a sudden, the athlete has taken this step by themselves with just a little bit of prompting. I think, the reason that I love coaching rowing so much, but also the reason it gives me so much anxiety this time of year, is I shove my crew off the dock on race day and I can't do anything for them. So my job in every single practice, every single stroke leading up to that, is making sure that they can do it themselves. So finding tools for my role as a coach to grow their skills to do it themselves is I think, absolutely paramount to being successful in this.
Fantastic. And in fact, what you've just said echoes a reading of a book which I read a very long time ago. It's called The Inner Game of Tennis. And you're nodding like you've already read it. The guy starts coaching tennis, and Kevin, you're a tennis player, and he just says, I'm going to hit balls over the net, and I want you to tell me, is the ball spinning or not when it comes over the net? And it's that observation led with a question, which then leads you around to understanding the difference between topspin and backspin and all the other things. And it's a really lovely method, which, of course, hearing you say it makes me think, what was I doing at the weekend that I could have done better? Kevin, Helen, it's been a complete delight having you both on Rowing Chat with me. Kevin, kicking off with you, can you tell the listeners where they can find iCrew and how they can take a look for themselves and appraise it for their own uses?
Yeah, definitely. So iCrew.club on any web browser, ICREW.club. And on that page, there's a Learn More button, and that'll take you to a page with links to lots of tutorial videos, some overview videos, a contact page. They can click the contact page and fill out that form and get set up in iCrew for a free 60-day trial. And a lot of clubs have been doing that and kind of kicking the tires for a while. And if they choose to go ahead and adopt iCrew after that 60 days, The fee is $2 US, $2.49 US per rower per year. So that is a very nominal fee. It's less than putting like every rower dropping a quarter in a tin every month. It's 20.75 cents. It's very nominal fee. And that's after a 60-day trial if they want to stay on board and keep using it.
It's less than a latte, let's be clear. You're from where Starbucks started.
Very much less than a latte a month, way less.
So $2.49 per rower per month.
Per year. Per year. Yeah.
Great. Helen, if people want to connect with you online, where can they find you and the Mount Baker crew?
They can find my contact information on our webpage, which is mbrsc.com. Stands for Mount Baker Rowing and Sailing Center. As much as we talk about rowing, we do actually also have sailing. And my contact information is there, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you both very much indeed. It's been a delight. And till next time, that's the end of Rowing Chat. Bye-bye.